Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Purpose in Pain Conversations, where we have heart talks, conversations on life, love, and all things healing. Now, if you have been watching and following us on YouTube, you know that it gets a bit real up in here. So I hope you have your journals ready, you have your coffee ready, and you're ready to participate in the conversation that we are having. Today, I have a very special guest. Low key, like I'm like a fan, so I'm just like trying to keep myself together because she's a powerhouse. She's a wife. She's a founder of a foundation called You're Not Alone, and I'm so delighted to have you on our couch today, and to talk more on who this special lady is, ladies and gentlemen. Mulalo Magoro. Magoro.
Yes.
Mulalo Magoro, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry for
thank
butchering
you.
your surname.
No, it's okay. No, I get a lot of that.
Really?
Like where people say Magoro instead of Magoro. And I always correct them.
Because
So,
you're vendor.
I'm Venda. So
And-
Magoro is more, I think, Pedi Otswana.
Yes, and I'm Pedi.
Yes. And you Pedi, right? I mean,
Okay,
justifiable.
so what does it mean? I'm sorry, just
I don't know, actually.
okay.
We can ask my husband.
Yeah, no, we'll call your husband.
I don't know what it, I don't think it has a meaning though.
Oh, because
But I just know that Magoro is like royalty.
yeah,
So,
okay,
yeah,
it makes sense because Magoro would be like tribe or like
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yes, I hear what
You
you're
know what I
saying.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Finally.
Finally, it's been how many 3 years,
We've
ne?
tried,
Or 2 years
yes,
or
yeah,
so. Oh my
of
gosh!
trying,
So this is
yeah.
gonna be fire because I mean God has been cooking this conversation for a while.
I hope so.
In the fire. But anyway, introduce yourself and let's
Okay, so my name is Mulalo Magoro is introduced, and I am the founder of You Are Not Alone Ministry. So we've changed it from foundation
Okay.
to ministry because simply we've realized that the work we do is really ministry work. So yeah, I'm the founder of You Are Not Alone listen to me still saying foundation ministries, and I'm a wife, and I love Jesus, I love God with all of my heart, and I think God has called me, and I'm delighted to do that which he has called me towards women and young girls, right? So yeah, man, I don't know what more to say about myself.
I mean, I wanted to, you've started it. So I wanted us to go into why you are not alone.
Yeah.
How did it come about? I mean, you briefly told us that, it's no longer called foundation, but a ministry. But how did it lead you to this place where it's You Are Not Alone ministries?
So maybe just to give a bit of background. So You Are Not Alone came at a time where I felt very alone.
Okay.
Where, I mean, you can be surrounded by people, but yet still feel very alone, right? So I was going through a lot in my life. I had just lost my dad. I had just lost my second engagement, and so I just felt so alone. And there was just it almost felt like I was just going through the waters time and again, and I felt really alone. I didn't really feel like there's someone that I can talk to. And I remember at that moment, I just wanted my mom, right? And I called her. I'm like, Mom, I need to come home. I need that motherly love. And from that conversation, I don't know if we'll go there, but from that conversation on its own, I was just reminded that I am not alone, and that, there are probably so many women out there that feel, yes, you've got your parents, you've got your siblings, friends, and whatever, but there's just that one thing that is missing, and only God can be able to fill that void. And that is what my mom told me, that you need God. You need God. You don't need me as your mom. Yes, I can be there to wipe your tears, but ultimately you need God to feel that void that you're feeling inside of you. So that's how the ministry came about. And after that conversation with my mom, now it really set in me that there are so many women that have gone through a lot, and they're not really able to express, with the second person how they're feeling. But they can run to God. They can run to Jesus with what they're carrying. And God is not a judgmental God. Is not gonna sit there with a whip and be like, but why did you get yourself into this? So I felt that way, and I think immediately in that moment, God laid it in my heart to remind women that you are not alone. God is there with you through the valley. God is there in the waters. He's there. He doesn't leave us and concentrate on other women and concentrate on other people. He's right there in it with us, even with the self-inflicted valleys or waters that we're going through, because mine were surely self-inflicted. The waters I was going through were self-inflicted, but I got a beautiful and warm reminder that even in that, God is with me.
Yeah,
So
I
that
love
is how
I
that is
love
how it came about.
I was reading just this morning Psalm 139,
Yeah.
where, you know, it speaks out. I'm just going to paraphrase on how I read it and how
Yeah.
I received it. It speaks about how God searches our minds, searches our hearts. He knows our hearts, searches our minds,
Yeah.
yet still He stays.
Yeah.
You know, it speaks to what you're saying, that it doesn't matter what you have done. It
Mm.
doesn't matter what you have put yourself into. God
Yeah.
says, I know your mind in that place. I know where you were. I know where your heart is, but I still call you my own.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. I'm almost like crying now because it blew my mind, because so many times we put ourselves in a guilt box,
Yeah.
and, you know, we condemn ourselves because of what the things that we have done, you know. But just before we get into that, I want to go quickly into two things that you spoke about. You lost your dad.
Yeah.
And I want you to just paint a picture of where you were in that place. Were you born again?
Yeah.
Were you at home?
Yeah.
Were you away from home when your dad passed away? And then from there, then we'll start speaking about these self-inflicted things that you got yourself into that made you realize that, man,
Yeah.
I need God.
Yeah. So my dad passed on in 2015, if I'm correct, 2014, 2015, somewhere there. And I was still in Pretoria at that time. I was staying in Pretoria. And I remember that time when he passed on. I was saved by then. But, you know, also growing up as a pastor's daughter, I mean, I grew up in church all my life, and just under that umbrella on its own. So I was saved by then, but my life was still, it wasn't where it is now. It wasn't a self-decision to have a relationship with God. It was more of, you grew up in this, you accepted Christ because your dad said you're going to accept Christ, right? So it wasn't like I didn't have a personal relationship with God, let me put it that way. So even when he passed on, I remember it was a Friday. So my dad was sick for long, with diabetes and all of that. So he was sick for long, and I remember that Friday, I called him, and he didn't pick up because he was in bed, not feeling well. So then I think that evening, because at that time when he called me, I was still like, my life was a mess, right? So I was out at some club at that particular Friday with a couple of friends, and my dad called me back right that evening. Now, but because I'm in the midst of what I'm not even supposed to be in the midst of, I don't take the call, right? And I didn't take the call. Then that morning, I think that was actually a Thursday, because then he passed on the Friday. Okay. Yeah. So then that Friday morning, that's when we got a call that my dad had passed. So I regretted so much, because I mean, that could have been my last call with him, and I didn't take it because I was busy.
And you're wondering what he wanted to say.
Exactly. You know, so I didn't take it. I was busy with other stuff that I was not even supposed to be busy with in the first place. So we get the call. I remember I was with, I've got 3 younger sisters.
Okay.
So I was with one of them, and we got the call. My mom calls actually, and she says, she had actually told my pastor then, and she told him, she's like, please go to my daughters. Their dad has passed on. But then I called her to just check how is dad doing and whatever, and she couldn't hold it. Then she's like, he's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, he's gone. Like my world shattered. And I remember my sister was there with me, and she could hear that something's wrong. And I'm like, baby, daddy's gone. And trust me, all of us were daddy's girls. Like, he was our world, right? And at that moment, I remember my sister grabbing the curtains in the bedroom, and she pulled them off the rail. And she fell down, and like that then became our reality, that dad is no longer there. And immediately we had to then all drive home. My older sister then came, and then Taki came, and then we left with my brother-in-law, and we all went home, and he was gone, and I carried that guilt of, my dad called me probably for the last time, and
I wasn't there.
And I I was busy with stuff that he would not even be proud of, you know. And yeah, man. But God has been so good. He's healed us from it, and He's able to carry us. And, you know, it saddens me that my dad never, yes, he knew, my dad, for a reason, he knew that there was something special that God has placed inside of me. And I remember his words, I'll never forget them. He always said to me, Mulalo, I'm so proud of the faith you have in God, because I've always just had faith for greatness, you know, in God. And he would always say to me, I'm so proud of the faith you have. And by then, I mean, I was a child of God, but I didn't really know what God had placed inside
and what
of
that
me,
meant,
and what that really meant for me and him, you know. So I lost my dad, and but God has been so good. It's been many years now, I think almost 7 to 8 years now. And God has carried us as a family, my mom, all of my sisters as well. And I can't remember what the other question was.
So I just really, I know I asked you another question, but just because I relate so much to what you were saying. So I lost my dad as well. Same year, if it's 2015.
Sure.
Yeah. And I know right now when I look back on, you know, my relationship with my dad, I speak a lot about how my dad and I were not on good terms when he passed away. But when I look back on the relationship we had and how he viewed me, I always said I didn't know I had lost my covering.
Sure.
Because he was one person who was like a cheerleader to me, right? And even in times where I didn't believe his words because I wasn't okay with him, he was that to me. He believed in me on days that I didn't even know that, you know, there's someone who could believe in a person I thought was useless, you know. And right now when I look back, I see that in God. I see how my dad treated me being revealed in how God relates to me. God is such an affirmer in my life right now. And for the longest of times before cultivating a relationship with him, I longed for a person who would affirm me. But like this morning, he was affirming me, saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what you have done, you're still my own. And I just wanted to just go back to that, to say, do you see that touch of your dad and how God relates to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like my dad, for me, I had a very good relationship with my dad, and he was there. And we felt his love. Like my dad was a superhero. I remember he loved Durban so much. So every holiday for my dad was Durban.
It's low-key Zulu.
Listen, like we were there almost every year. Like we drove there, and my dad would, this memory I'll never forget. My dad will get there and, you know, settle in. So one thing about my dad, he was very spontaneous. He would never book accommodation for us, right? So we'll drive all the way to Durban without accommodation. We get there, that's when we're going around looking for accommodation, right? And I mean, God was so faithful to always get accommodation. But nonetheless, my dad would, so he would always put out money for all of us. Like there was a day for shopping. He would make sure that he gives each one of us the same amount of money for us to go shopping. And then he will then take my mom as well. And then we go shopping. He will never buy a thing for himself. He will do all, like that day, it's about his wife and his girls. And then the following day, while we are still sleeping, that's when he will go out to town by himself, and then he will go by. But that for me was so special because it told me that you come first. And I remember this message he used to preach, which he always titled "You First."
Come on.
And he lived it. He lived it. He would put his wife first. He would put us first, you know. So coming to God, I love David, the book of Psalms, because David is a very vulnerable guy, and he would be so honest with God about his feelings, how he's feeling about God. Like he would, I remember there was a scripture, I think it's in Psalm 22, if I'm not mistaken, where David went on a rant, like he was angry with God. God, where are you? Where are you allowing my enemies, you know, to be after me? And then at the end, David then says that, but I know you are God. And he would say, but I know that you have been with my forefathers. You know, so he would always come back to that knowledge of who God is. And Tiisetso, I must tell you, I I've grown so in love with God because of how God loves me. I am so confident that whether I wrong him or whether I do good, his love for me rather, is unconditional. It's not based on the good side of me or the bad side of me. It's consistent and it's constant, So I've learned to find rest in God. I've learned to find peace in God. Even in my worst moments, I know that God is still looking at me and saying, I love you, Mulalo. And his love for me is not determined by my actions. He loves me nevertheless. Yes, my actions might draw me away from his presence, but nothing will ever separate me from his love.
Yeah.
So I am very confident in God's love for me. I take rest in it. And I think it's really just what my dad gave me, the love he gave me, can never compare with the love that God gives me, because my dad is gone now. I don't get to experience his presence or to experience the
flesh,
love, that I used to. But God is here. And he says, if your fathers, if your natural fathers can give you gifts, what more I, your God, what more I, and I find rest in that I might not have my physical father around me anymore, but he's a father to the fatherless, and I've never felt alone. And I think also God, amazingly, I see my father through my husband as well. My husband has traits like my dad. The way he laughs sometimes.
Always the case.
The way he laughs sometimes, I'm like, Flip, you just look like my dad right now.
What's that?
And how he loves my family as well. I'll tell you now, yesterday, my sister's tire burst, and my husband, we stay in Centurion, she stays in Midrand. My husband's sister was in class, says to me, I'm gonna go now check on your sister. He drove, that was like around 7 in the evening. Drove, went to look for a tire. So he's got a friend that sells tires and whatever. Went and got that tire, drove to my sister, changed her tire, go work, because that tire burst and she was not gonna be able to go to work. So he did all of that, and when he came home, I gave him a hug. I'm like, baby, thank you for loving my family. So it just feels, and in all of that, I see God. Because God also shows us his love through the people around us. He doesn't necessarily come down, but he will show you bits and pieces of his love through the people around us. And it's really, I pray that we are able to see it, that, Father, this is a God moment. My husband did not have to drive all the way to Midrand and go buy a tire and then go back to a place, change her tires and do all of that. But this for me is an expression of your love, so
that he can go above and beyond.
Exactly, so I experience God's love in so many ways, even through the people that he has surrounded me with.
That's beautiful. So I love the foundation that we are laying of God's love, because right now we're about to go to a place that a lot of people would condemn, and it's part of your story that I also relate to, and that's why you're sitting here. And I want us to go into that, and just for you guys to just bear in mind the love of God, even when you're receiving this.
Absolutely.
So tell us about, I saw this once, I think twice, about your abortion story. It stood out for me because it's a place where there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of voices from outside the Christian community and in the Christian community. So I want you to take me through that. Tell us about that. When did it happen? How did it happen? Did it happen more than once? Just give us the background of that journey.
So that journey is one that I never thought I would walk. And I didn't walk it once, not twice, I think 3 or 4 times. And I remember that time I was still staying in Pretoria. A lot happened in Pretoria. Listen, Sunnyside was not good for me. So it happened in Pretoria, Sunnyside, and I was still in college then. I had just, I think growing up as a pastor's daughter also, there was shame. I love my parents, but I also feel that, sometimes, I'm not a parent myself, but I feel sometimes we become so strict with our children that we never teach them self-discipline. And we never teach them the reason why we are saying no to certain things, to a point where when they get all the freedom in the world, like we misuse it. We go beyond what we are supposed to be doing, or being exposed to things that we were never exposed to, right? And I'm not saying that my actions are based on that. Yes, there was a lot of influence around me also.
It does influence your mindset.
Yes, exactly. But also I just feel like, because I grew up in that setup where it was no, 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 and there wasn't really any explanation of why the no. What do you do in a place where you are surrounded by people that are not necessarily Christian? What do you do when you're exposed to an environment that does not represent God? Some of those lessons I never got.
Because we don't live in a bubble.
Exactly. So now then I am now in Pretoria, and I'm exposed to all of this. I think for me, the first thing would be just the choice of friends that I had at that time. It was not good. And there was a lot of bad influence around me, and which then obviously now influenced my decisions. And I mean, people will say, no, but you're your own person, you make your own. No, this influence is real, right? And what you surround yourself with, you become that as well.
What you constantly consume.
Yes, it's
becomes what you think about.
Exactly. And it becomes your reality.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that was the case with me. My environment, my friends, what I was exposed to did not affirm the child of God in me. So then I remember I started dating this particular guy, and I got pregnant. And the first thing is my parents. I'm like, no, like I'm not even thinking myself. I'm not even thinking.
Never is. You're thinking other people.
Yes,
because the voices come from other people.
Exactly. So I'm thinking my mom, my dad was still alive at that time. I'm thinking my mom, my dad. Oh my goodness, no, I can't. The church, I can't. So that was the only thing in my mind. I cannot do this to my parents. And of course, the next decision was I need to get rid of this.
How old were you?
I think at that time I was still young, hey? I think I was 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere there. So I make that decision. I'm like, I cannot do this to my parents. I go and I remove it. And then, and the guy, I remember I called him. At that time, I don't even know if I had a cell phone. I can't remember, but I remember going to a public phone at that time, and I called him like, listen, I'm pregnant. And then he's like, oh, you need to remove it. Then he sends me money. And because I'm also now on that mode, I need to remove it. I don't even question his decision to.
Because now this is a person who's supposed to like take care of the child.
Yes.
And if on the onset they're like,
but
what?
To be honest, my mind was not even on. But why? Like I also just wanted to get rid of it.
You knew you wanted to do it as well.
I knew that this is not what I'm.
Yeah.
This is not what I want to do. So so my mind did not even go to. But you're not even considering fathering this child. Like my mind did not even go there. I was on. I need to remove this because of my parents. I was more concerned about that. So it also tells you where my relationship with God was as well. Because I'm not even concerned about, God, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Okay, God, I've made this decision. It was wrong and these are the results. What do you want? My mind was not there. So it also tells you where I was with my relationship with God.
You're not living for him, but you're living for everybody else.
Exactly. And also growing up also in a pastor's household, most of the pastors' kids suffer with pleasing people.
Yeah, no.
So it's more because all eyes are on you, the church, the community, school, people, everybody knows that you're a pastor's daughter. Therefore, there's a lot of expectation as well on you, and you are now concerned about the community, the people. So you never really live for you and for God.
And a reputation
and your reputation of your family and my dad. So I'm like, oh my God. So my mind is not even, what does God want me to do? I did not even have that kind of relationship with him at that time. So my mind is at, I don't want to do this to my parents. Let's get rid of this. So I do that. And then I moved on from that relationship. And then I started dating another guy, I think a couple of years later. And but with this guy, things were much different. We had a good relationship, and we started the marriage process as well with him. So, but then between us dating and starting the marriage process, then I got pregnant about 3 times with him, and those 3 times we had to remove.
Sure.
To
he was also born again.
he was born again. He was also, so he was in a pastor's daughter, but his brother was a pastor. So, but and then they had a ministry as well. So he would preach as well. So we are both on, like we are in it. We are around
and going
what
through
should
the
I say
same
it?
thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we are there, but our relationship with God is really nowhere.
Yeah.
It's really nowhere. So then I got pregnant then, and I think with that one, it really hit hard because this was someone that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
And he had promised to marry me and all of that. So with the first one, it didn't really have an impact on me because I just wanted to get it done. But of course, I'm in the guilt of, oh my God, I never thought I would walk this path, stayed with me. And then with this one, I also felt the guilt. Lord, why do I keep doing the same thing? Why do I keep, making the same mistake? And but to be honest, I think I'm one person that I let go of issues easily because I talk about it. And I always find maybe one or two people that I can talk to. And so with this one, I think it hurt more because we never got to spend the rest of our lives together even.
After the sacrifice.
After the sacrifices, we never got to spend our lives together. He then started cheating and all of that. Then we had to cut now the engagement as well. So we had to let it go. So, but I think my journey of abortion, number one is God has healed me from it, absolutely. And I mean, when it happened then, I never knew that this is a journey that God is gonna use as well. It's almost like God always goes for those areas that you never really want to talk about or share, but God wants you to use that very story to help someone else. I remember there was a lady a few years ago, she called me and she said to me, Mulalo, before I even got married, she's like, Mulalo, I see God, she's very prophetic. She's like, God wants to, before I even started Yana, she says, God wants to use you to heal young girls that have been through abortion. And then I had never shared my story with her, not even on my channel or anything. So I'd never really shared. So that for me was confirmation. I'm like, there's no way she knows. This is certainly God speaking through her, and God has helped me to share it with confidence, and not because I'm very proud of what I've done, but because I understand now that yes, God has a way, like it always blows my mind, how God has a way of knowing that you're going to go and make that mistake, right? And I'm going to use that mistake to help other people, to help yourself, number one, to realize that you are more than that you have committed, but also not only for yourself, but for other people as well. So by then, obviously, I didn't know that. And now I understand why. I mean, God could have helped me to stop doing that, but it didn't happen that way. I still went for it. And it was not a nice thing to do, being there and to experience that. It's still, like, I remember one time I was in Polokwane with my ex-fiance, and I did the abortion here in Pretoria. Then I went to Polokwane to see him. And when I was there, he left me in his apartment, went away with some girls. And then I started getting sick, because when I did the abortion, they had not done it well. So there was still some stuff left. So then I had to ask people there. I didn't even have a car then. I had to ask people there to take me to hospital. And then I was hospitalized for like 2 days, and they had to clean me up again. And he was not even there, for that. Yes, he was not even there. So for me, that was a lesson as well, that live for God, because people will desert you even in times where you expect them to be there for you, because we did this together, you were there in all of this, but at that moment where you really need them to be there for you, they are nowhere to be found. They're actually
just no matter how many times a person can promise you to give you life, but selling your soul at the expense of your relationship with God will leave you deserted.
Absolutely.
And just to quickly wrap up, I just want us to talk about, we spoke about the love of God, and we spoke about the mistakes and how God also put you back into it. I think we need spaces like Yana where women can come and speak out if we, I feel like if you got somebody, or if I got, because I was in a similar situation,
Okay.
if I had somebody that I can freely go to and be like, this is what's happening. This is my thought process right now. What of my parents? What of this? And you have somebody who pulls you in and says, calm down.
Yeah.
God still loves you. You made a mistake, but let's walk this thing, you know. Then we won't have this problem of now I'm going to abort, now I'm going to live with the guilt. And I think it's spaces like Yana where people can come through and be like, I know you relate to this.
Yeah.
So this is what's happening.
Yeah.
I just want you to, you know, just how did you recover from that? You know, going back to know the knowledge of God, you know, loving you and all of that. And just to give, just quickly to give us, you know, a brief explanation of that journey of how you came back to God and be like, I'm going to hold on to your love, even in my mistakes.
Yeah. So at that time, my pastor then, Pastor Edgar, I'll forever be grateful to him because he carried me through my healing journey. Because remember, even after the abortions, then my relationships also were just falling apart, and it just felt like it's one thing after the other. So I remember there was one prayer that my dad, Pastor Edgar, would always say, Mulalo, I need you to confess this every morning when you wake up, because I was so broken from the abortions and from the 2 broken engagements. And the prayer was, Lord, heal my heart, restore my soul, and make me over again. So I would continuously confess that. I would continuously pray that and just say, Lord, restore my heart, you know, renew me and make me over again. And in me confessing that daily, I could feel the renewal of God in my soul. I could feel the renewal of God. And I decided at that moment that I want to commit my life to God. I want to serve God. And trust me, because I desired it, number one, and I prayed about it, and God gave me the ability. I remember I went in like at church and I started serving like nobody's business. I was serving, and I think that was, I can't say I went to see a psychologist, I didn't, but just allowing myself to be vulnerable before God and before my pastors as well, and to share with them, this is what I've been through, these are the mistakes I've made, and them helping me and carrying me through that journey and teaching me how to pray. Because sometimes we pray, but we are not praying the correct prayers. We are not praying prayers that allow God to heal us and to allow God to restore us, you know. So in me being taught, this is what you need to pray to God. And I remember he gave me was it a prayer or a message about soul ties, that you need to cut now the soul ties with these guys that you've slept with, you know. And I then decided I'm going to go into warfare and just cut the soul ties and make this prayer over and over again. And that was my healing process, honestly. I think the what I can advise women is, if you ever have to throw yourself at anyone, throw yourself at God. Because it is only God that heals. Honestly, it is only God that heals. Yes, he might bring in people to say different things to you, but ultimately you will need to surrender your pain, your brokenness, everything to God and say, Lord, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what I need to do from here, but you know me better than I do. You know the path that I need to take in order for me to experience total healing and total restoration in my life. And that is what I did. And I healed. Tiisetso, I really healed, and God restored me. And I am what I am now because of God. I can't give anybody else the glory. It is really just that commitment and that surrender to God, and for God himself to heal me, because he does it better than anybody else.
That's beautiful. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, I wish we had like 5 hours to have this conversation. But as you heard from the conversation, we serve a God that pursues us in our mess. He doesn't wait for us to be perfect, for us to pursue. He never stopped pursuing you. And this is what I'm getting from your story, that he pursues us and he heals us and he restores completely. Most people will be like, no, I've done all these things. I've been rejected by so many people. And that's another story for another day. But now you're married and you're happy. And you are happy with your position with God. And that's beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mulalo. I just want you to quickly tell them where they can find you.
Okay.
And then, follow her and be healed by her process and her journey.
Amen. So you can follow me on Instagram at you_r_underscore not alone underscore ministries. That's where you can find us, or you can just type in Yana. It should come up. Or you can follow me on Mulalo Magoro as well on Instagram, and on Facebook it's the same, you_r_underscore not alone ministries. You can find us there.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
you.
I pray that God enlarges your territory and you can reach more girls, that they can come open up and find a safe space in you.
Amen. Thank
With that said, thank you so much for staying and sticking through the entire video. My name is Tiisetso, and it's until the next conversation.